there are a few key success factors. I think of paramount importance, it is to help our colleagues understand why there is a need for change. We all realize that the world is changing at an unprecedented pace. And in the midst of this change, it will have a great impact on education in ways of how, of the what, the how, and the why. So here, one of the key success factors in terms of bringing about this reform is to help our professors and educators to understand the changes that will impact education and what this impact is and how we need to respond. Okay, so that will be one key success factor. Now, educators, when they understand why it is important to change and to respond to this change, then there will be this intrinsic motivation and professional responsibility to bring about these changes that will meet the needs of this change that is in the landscape. And this is where it could be summed up, as, the responsibility of an educator. What is our responsibility as an educator? And I believe our responsibility is to educate our students with knowledge, skills, and attributes that will enable them to be relevant in the demands of this new landscape. So that's the first key success factor. The second key success factor is the understanding the needs of our colleagues. What do they need to be supported? What could be done to enable them to respond to this change and be taking that process of change forward? And I think, as all academics, colleagues would say, one of the key is that they do not have time. And of course, I also would add this second part is that they may not know what they do not know. So if it is in the process of change, take for example, to adopt technological tools to be enablers in the process of education to build new attributes and skills in our students, then I think we have to support our academic colleagues in these two domains. So there must be good resources allocated to say, help our professors, to overcome their time so that you can support them in developing these resources so that their time for research and other responsibility can continue to be protected. And then we must provide them with technical expertise that can help them to redesign and redevelop their modules and contents in the ways that technological tools can be incorporated to help students to be engaged in the point of learning that would help them to achieve the learning outcomes that they ought to have. So this is a second key success factor. I think the third key success factor is that when you have educational reform such as this, it must be taken as a holistic approach, an ecosystem approach. You cannot just address one issue without addressing the other issues, because in an education system as illustrated by an ecosystem, every component within that system are impacted as an outcome of change, and as an outcome of change in one component, and others will be impacted, so therefore others must respond. Let me give you an illustration. If let's say that we have defined goals of education to be achieved, so that will be supported by a set of curriculum that can enable this goals to be achieved. And then, but for these goals to be achieved, it's not the refining of the curriculum alone. Pedagogy must change. Learning environment must change. Programs and activities of the students must also change. So therefore, you must have a total ecosystem approach in order to achieve that goals, the new goals of education. And this is precisely what we did at the university as well as the National Institute of Education. So in summary, 3 key success factors. One is understanding your responsibility as an educator, knowing that what you must do in response to the change in the education of your students. Second is that addressing the needs of the academic colleagues, in terms of technical support and resource support. And the third is taking a holistic approach to the reform, as in the case of an ecosystem approach. I think there is a marked difference between the learners of, say, in the 20th century and learners especially in the 21st century, especially in recent years. In the 20th century, much of our education is delivered in a didactic pattern, where students are more passive learners and the teachers, who are the monopolies of the knowledge and skills, are the key player in that whole education process. But because of the prevalence of technology availability to students, those who are born in the digital age, they are very much comfortable with the use of technology. And as an outcome, it impacted them in their behavior, particularly in the area of the process of learning. Today, when we look at the learning profiles of learners of today, we could dub them as epic learners, EPIC. E standing for experiential. Learners today like to have the emotional experience in that process of learning. Second, participation for P. Now, students today are no more the passive learners who just sit down and listen to the teacher. They want to participate in that process of learning. Take, for example, if they want to get new information, from the internet, they want to Google themselves, and play an active role in that process of learning. So P. I is imagery. And students today, I think, as they are very much accustomed to, the animations and cartoons and all those of the using the digital tools, like iPad and laptops and all those, they are very accustomed to images, and they are very much influenced by images. So therefore, the more animated, the easier to empower the student to learn and to understand concepts and so on. C is connectedness. Today, students like to work as a group, collaborative learning, team-based learning. And they not only stay connected in the physical sense as a group in a classroom, they want to continue to be committed or connected in the cyberspace. After the classroom activity, when they go home and do their own self-directed learning in the same topic, they may still want to be connected, in the emails and messages and so on, so that they can support one another in the learning. So you will find that the learner profiles of today has been transformed, very much different from that of the 20th century. That's why we call them the epic learners. I would say that if you ask me today what will be the scenario, say 10 years down the road, I would say that it is difficult to predict, because changes is going to be so fast and so extensive, that people are talking about, whether there will be a single institution that can capture the education of the world. Yeah, so it is far-fetched in this sense. But my thought is that with this empowerment of technology to bring about connected learning, I would say that there will be a lot of opportunities of students from around the world coming together in terms of learning together, understanding issues together, and hopefully build a world community that can address the world issues together. Now, of course, many of the questions today, talking about what about language barrier, time barrier, and all those. I don't think there is going to be too much of a problem in the future. Google Translate today is able to do the translation instantaneously. You can have students speaking Hindi in India, you can understand exactly what the student is speaking in seconds. Likewise in Germany, in US and all those, or in China. So language, in terms of bringing, that is currently, to some extent is an impediment to connectedness. This will resolve by technological advancement in no qualms. It will be resolved. So my thoughts that in the future, schools around the world could build a learning community together. Teachers from different schools around the world can learn from one another and can even engage in activities or plan activities where the students themselves can come together. Let me give you a very simple example as a botanist. Okay. If the subject of studying plants is to be taught, Singapore is in the tropics. We have a range of plant species that are very typical of those, that adapts to the tropical environment. Germany have plants of the temperate landscape. Now, for students to be able to compare, say, features of plant that adapt to the temperate landscape versus those in the tropical landscape, you can do it real time through technology today. And that gives a greater breadth and depth to the learning of the students of a particular subject. And so therefore, I believe that the connectedness will bring about a greater value of learning, a greater breadth and depth of learning of topic today, which could be very much localized in the landscape itself. So my direct answer to you will be that the way in which technology can bring about the connections or connectedness of learners around the world, it is just up to our imagination and innovation.